So when people travel with me, they sometimes hear me say, even though I've been to this site before, it's different. And that's the way that I feel. Every time I go to a site, it actually is different. Different, not because the site changes, that's obvious, but because it's a different moment in time, and I'm there with different people. I want to give you the best example I can think of this reality. And it goes back to one particular moment a couple of years ago. I guided a group from Finchley Reformed Synagogue in London. One of the members in the group was not actually a British Jew, but a Canadian Jew who was working in Tanzania. Now, it sounds like the beginning of a joke, but actually a Canadian Jew looking for a connection with a Jewish community, and therefore she joins the synagogue in its online services on Friday night. She hears the synagogue is coming to Israel, and she joins them in Israel. Her name is Erin. Erin then gets transferred from Tanzania to our region, not to Israel, but to Jordan, to Amman, the capital of Jordan. Why does she go to Amman? Because she works for the Canadian Foreign Service, and her job is dealing on the front line with the resettlement of Syrian refugees. However, she doesn't speak Arabic, so she has a team working with her. And this team happens to be, of course, Arabic-speaking Jordanians, and like about 50% of Jordanians, almost all of them are originally Palestinians. She has a dream, and her dream is to bring these ex-Palestinians, these Jordanians who are of Palestinian origin, as would be the correct way of putting it, to visit Israel, to learn more about Israel. She gets in contact with me and she asks me to guide them for a couple of days. We find a date. The date doesn't work out in the end because their visas don't come through, and then she chooses another date which I'm not available on. I organize other people to do the guiding. I'm guiding a different group in Tel Aviv in the afternoon that she is in Jerusalem. I've set her up with a friend of mine who is a Palestinian who's doing part of the guiding in East Jerusalem, and she phones me up in a terrible state. And she says to me, Julian, I don't know what to do. My group is besides themselves. We've just come from a visit to the Abu Khadir family. Now, it should ring a bell for you somewhere. Abu Khadir family, the parents and brother of Muhammad Abu Khadir, who was the 16-year-old Palestinian boy who was murdered, burnt to death by Jewish terrorists who were responding in an act of revenge after the murder of the 3 young Jewish boys from the area of the Etzion block. 2 awful, awful incidents, both of them disgusting, horrible incidents. But they are besides themselves with anger and upset. She says, you have to do something. But I'm in Tel Aviv, and I'm guiding a group in Tel Aviv. And I rack my brains, what should I do? So I say to her, Erin, where are you eating dinner this evening? And she says, in Jerusalem. I said, come to Jaffa. Come and have dinner in the Shuk HaPishpishim, in the flea market in Jaffa. And I'll meet you there when I finish with my group at about 9:30 in the evening. I come to meet the group. They're sitting at the table. I can tell immediately that the emotions are running very high in the group. And I'm thinking on my feet, what do I do? What do I do to deal with the situation? And then the germ of idea begins to form in my mind. And they finish eating, and we get up from the table, and I say to them, I want you to come for me on a walk for about an hour and a half. As we leave the area where they're eating, I look up at the street sign, and I see on the street sign it's the name of a rabbi. I don't remember the name, and it says Migdolei Rabbanei Morocco, one of the great rabbis of Moroccan Jewry. And I realize, of course, that this is just like they have a refugee story. This is the street named after a person connected to a community with a refugee story. And I point it out to them. And I say, isn't it interesting? You are a group of people of Palestinian origin living in Jordan today, eating in a restaurant in a street named after a Moroccan Jewish rabbi from a community with a similar story like yours. Let's go and have a look at this place, bearing in mind the stories all of us bear. I take them, we walk through the flea market in Jaffa to the area of what is called the old city of Jaffa. And we go to maybe the oldest archaeological find in Jaffa. a find from over 3,000 years ago of Egyptian remains. And we stand there and I suggest to them that the question of where we begin to tell our stories is crucial. You can tell the story of Jaffa, I say to them, starting in 1948 and the War of Independence, Nakba to Palestinians, the great disaster to Palestinians, to us, thankfully, the beginning of the story of our independence as a state. You can start over there and can begin as a story of a group of people who lose their homes. But you can also begin as a story thousands and thousands of years ago when there was no such thing as Palestinians, when there was no such thing as Islam. And I suggest to them that the way we tell our stories is absolutely crucial in the way we visit each and every place in this land, but not only the way we visit, but in terms of who we are and how we see our futures. We walk up to Gana Pisgah, the beautiful spot in the highest point of Old Jaffa, and we look out over Tel Aviv. And I point out that there is a piece of sculpture over there that tells 3 biblical stories, showing once again our biblical connections, the Jewish people's biblical connections to the land of Israel. I also point out that the name of the city Tel Aviv comes from the name of a book, the translation of Theodor Herzl's utopian novel about the Jewish people returning to the land of Israel. It's called Alt-Neuland in German, in the original. When it's translated by Sokolov into Hebrew, it's called Tel Aviv. Tel meaning old, an old archaeological hill. Aviv meaning spring, new, old, new land. And I say, look at, on the one hand, the sculpture with the 3 biblical stories. On the other hand, look down into the bright lights of the new Tel Aviv. That, I suggest, is part of our story. We go for a walk through the alleyways heading down to the port of Jaffa. As we enter the place of the port of Jaffa, by some incredible coincidence, who do we bump into immediately? Benny Gantz. Benny Gantz, as many of you know, the man who led the Kahol Lavan blue-white party to try and unseat Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi Netanyahu. The saga, the political saga continues. I walk over to him, it's an informal country, Israel, and I say to him, Benny, not sir, not Mr. Gantz, but Benny, this is a group of people who are of Palestinian origin, live in Jordan today, they're visiting, do you have something to say to them? And he said, sure. I turn to them and I say to them, this is the ex-chief of staff of the Israeli Defense Forces. And I think, oops, how are they going to respond to this? You know what they want to do? They all want to take selfies with him, and they're delighted. Bizarre moment. We keep walking until we get to a particular point in which we look in the direction of the Dolphinarium. The Dolphinarium, when you go to with me, when we visit together, you'll notice that it's gone. It was a huge structure that became a white elephant, but it had inside it a discotheque. That was the site during the Second Intifada of one of the worst suicide bombings in Israel. By the way, the Dolphinarium is right next to the Charles Claw Garden, which is built on the ruins of a Palestinian village that was destroyed in 1948 in the fighting. And I say the following to them. Let's have a look at the site. If you look through Jewish eyes, what are you going to see? You're going to see the Dolphinarium, you're going to see the story of the Second Intifada, 21 young people being murdered by a suicide bomber going to a discotheque. If you look through Palestinian eyes, you'll see the slight humps in the lawns of the Charles Claw Garden, which cover what was once Manshia, this Palestinian village that is no longer there. And then I say to them, folks, look, we can continue seeing things only through a single perspective. Me, through my Jewish eyes, I can only see the bombing of the Dolphinarium. You, through your Palestinian eyes, can only see the Palestinian village that once existed there. It will get us absolutely nowhere if that is the way that we look at this. I think we have to find a way to look beyond these 2 individual narratives. It will be the only way that we will ever create peace and find a way to live together. I can see that things are starting to shift with them. They're starting to relate differently. One of them whispers something to me soon after I finish, and he says to me, it's my wife's birthday. So I decide to end the evening in a different way from what I had intended. I take them to Dr. Lek. Once again, if we travel in this area together, I'll take you to Dr. Lek. Great ice cream. But I take them to Dr. Lek not only because of the ice cream, but because I know that generally the people working in Dr. Lek are Arabs. By some great stroke of luck that evening, the woman who is serving is not only an Arab Muslim woman, she's a religious Arab Muslim woman. And there she is. I speak Hebrew to her. In Hebrew I say to her, it's this lady's birthday, put on some fun music. And she puts on a birthday song in Arabic. We celebrate her birthday. We have ice cream together. In effect, we break bread together and try and imagine what it could be being together in this land. I wanted to give you just an inkling of one particular evening in one particular spot. When we travel together, we will find that everything we visit depends not only on the place that we visit, but on who we are, what our narratives are, what the stories are that we carry with us. I really do hope that you will not only be on virtual journeys with me, but that one day when all of this is over, you will join me in a real journey and we'll stand in the highest point in Jaffa, look over Tel Aviv and remember the stories we told together. Enjoy. See you soon. Take care.